you have to genuinely invest in understanding that potential customer to be able to then move them along that path. I think it's a lot of it's recon on the fly is what it is.
Hey folks, welcome back to In Focus, episode number 9. I am Austin Black, your host with Backroad Productions, the marketing agency that specializes in creating the campaign your customers cannot ignore. So excited to have you join us today as we talk about identifying the viewer need and helping them throughout the buying cycle. We're having a great visit today with Jared Wareham from Top Dollar Angus, and this podcast is centered around effective strategy when it comes to video marketing and marketing in general. And this is something that we tend to forget about so much. We think if we just go out and we market our product, our service, that people are going to come buy it. And the reality is, if we don't have an effective strategy behind that, if we don't target our audience, give them the right message, and create a path of conversion, then nothing happens, nothing works, and we actually end up wasting our money. And Jared's going to talk today about how we can identify the person, where they are in the cycle, how we can communicate to them in an effective manner, and how that sets up the entire marketing chain for success. Jared has had a lot of experience with startup companies. He has helped basically grow the brand from scratch, help it become a recognized brand, and help the business to grow. And he has done it by focusing on people, by focusing on what people need, where they are in the cycle, and how he can communicate with them effectively. One of the great things we're going to talk about today is how marketing truly is centered around human equity, around relationships, around identifying where that person is and how you can relate to them. And it's not just where they are in the buying cycle, but it's how they engage with marketing, how they engage with buying, how they engage with relationships, and how you can acknowledge that and develop a relationship with them. We're going to talk about the different tactics that you can use to create that conversation, what you need to listen for, what you need to give in information, and what questions you need to be asking. So it's going to be a great conversation with Jared Wareham, Top Dollar Angus, as we're talking about how to identify where in the buying cycle that person is and how we can effectively communicate with their needs and their desires. So let's jump into my conversation with Jared. All right, folks, we are back here on In Focus this week, episode number 10. And I am joined by Mr. Jared Wareham. Jared has been involved professionally in the cattle industry for over 2 decades. He's a self-proclaimed ranch geek that loves to learn the nuances of beef production systems coast to coast. He and his wife have 3 uniquely wonderful daughters, and together they manage a 100-head cow herd in West Central Missouri. Jared serves as the general manager for Top Dollar Angus, a company that uses genetic verification to help facilitate beef supply chains. He spends much of his time working with ranchers and feed yards all across the country. He also enjoys writing the New Generation column for Drovers Magazine, as well as speaking to agriculture groups and collegiate ag students all over the country. Jared, I know you've got a lot of experience when it comes to marketing. It's kind of been your forte for the past 20 plus years. So I'm really excited to hear what you have to share with us today. So welcome to In Focus.
You bet. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to visiting with you and hoping to maybe deliver some pieces of information or some insights today that somebody sees as valuable or picks up some nuggets out of what we're going to talk about today that helps their either their business or their ranch move forward.
Definitely. Well, now before we get started, I noticed you got some friends behind you there. I'm assuming those are Angus calves that you have in your background.
Yeah, this is a set of Red Angus Top Dollar verified feeder cattle that came out of South Dakota. Placed at a Kansas ranch or Kansas feed yard I work with. This was taken, I think it was late December or November of a year ago. Have to look back. Boy, we work with so many feeder cattle that it's hard to necessarily keep them all straight. But this particular group did come from that north, right. The ranch that they came from is right on the border of North or Nebraska and South Dakota. They sold to Winter Livestock, and a gentleman that I work with on the feed yard procurement side is feeding them there in northeast Kansas. So it's a great set of Red Angus calves. I've got the yellow tags from the Red Angus Association, as you can see in the years, and that's a lot of what I do on my day-to-day with Top Dollar. And we'd be more than happy to talk to you about all those layers, or specifically the marketing side of the businesses. I know that's a lot of what you wanted to get into today, but we can talk about any and all, because most of my experience lies with growing and developing new businesses, which would include the most important part of that, which is the marketing component. It's an abstract part of business, and it's sometimes not always enjoyable to those that don't get it and understand it, but it's extremely important. It is one of the biggest pillars of building a new business. And so be happy to share with your listeners my my painful lessons learned, and how you go from learning some of that on the fly to and passing some of that down to somebody hopefully that could use it. So
Definitely. Yeah. I want to talk about all that today. So let's start off with, your current role and company with Top Dollar Angus, and, just give me the 30,000 foot view of what the company does and what your participation with the company is.
you bet. So what the company does, we are a new way of looking at existing technologies, as well as the additional integration of new forms of this technology as it comes forward, which is analysis of genetic and or genomic potential in livestock. Specifically to what I do, beef. This has been, I would say, far more advanced in the poultry and swine industries, and we are now starting to scratch the surface of the potential of what we know we can do with genetic predictive indexes and metrics for analysis of profitability. Specifically to what we do, it's profitability in cattle feeding and packing side of it. So what we're going to analyze as an animal's potential to be successful, or likelihood to be more successful from a terminal trait standpoint. Gain and grade is the bread and butter of the cattle feeding world. Will these cattle stay healthy? Will they grow? Will they convert? And when they're ready to kill or harvest, will they, from a carcass metric standpoint, will the carcass weights be in line? Dressing percentages, what percent CABs, choice, primes, what percent 4s and 5s as far as yield grades? Are these cattle going to hit that metric and excel and return extra value to the feed yard, or are they going to be a detriment? And so we have to be able to help as a screening mechanism for the procurement side, help add some precision to their processes by saying, hey, we can analyze the genetics and or genomic information we have behind this set of cattle. They are not undocumented, unknown high-risk cattle. They are documented, known genetics. Here's how good they are. Mm-hmm. And then if you are a ranch that has spent decades or innumerable numbers of years working with a single genetic supplier or multiple genetic suppliers or genetics companies, such as AI companies like a Select Sires or an ST Genetics or an ABS, and you're utilizing both natural service sires as well as artificial insemination to create beef, how good is that beef? Let's take a look at what you've done as far as adding value to your herd from a genetic or genomic standpoint, and then we can vet those cattle as a third-party auditor and say, hey, these cattle are legit. Mm-hmm. They are good in these specific areas, and here's how good they are. And so to qualify for the Top Dollar program and carry this badge, like when cattle sell on Superior Livestock or other video sales or sale barns, to get that, they have to be in the upper quartile of the bell curve for those terminal traits. And so on a big scale, that's what we do. We add precision and resourcefulness to the supply chain from the ranch, in a sense, to the packer. We work in the spaces between spaces, easiest way for us to say it, doing our best to connect people to people, building a network, and then working to provide service through our seed stock partners. We've got over 150 of those coast to coast that include some of your largest, most significant Angus and Red Angus breeders in the country, as well as a handful of really good Angus Simmental cross breeders that we've just started bringing on, and a few that are in other areas. that create what would be called your balancer cattle. We've got a couple producers we're working with that do tremendous jobs producing high value balancer cattle that we get a lot of feed yard data back on, know the cattle work well. We also work for genetics companies with our seed stock partners ship program like Select Sires and ST I mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. So it's our job to provide service to their customers. We have multiple layers that we have to execute on a day-to-day basis, who we're working with and who we're connected to any 1 minute changes the perspective of what we represent to them. Sure. Are we a screening mechanism for cattle, or are we a value addition tool to your cattle? And standing back aside, that is what we do from a 30,000 foot view. But the other part that makes my job both equally exciting and equally stressful, which is why I drink coffee all day long, the fact that we have to develop this business because it is new. It's never been done before. So we're 5.5, 6 years into it. So that includes brand development, the marketing pieces, the strategies of revenue creation. How do we allocate and bring on new labor resources, new people to the team? Where do we do that? Key relationships, key influencers in the industry that we want to be able to establish relationships with so we can better service customers up and down that supply chain. So all of those things fall under the hat that I wear. Yeah. And so both 30,000 foot view and then specifically to what you're wanting to talk to on the podcast today would be definitely the marketing side of it. How do you build that brand? How do you address a potential customer depending on where they are on that, that we want to call it a scale or a path towards making a decision whether they want to do business with you, assessing their needs, assessing their insights, their personas, gathering that information and being able to either move them along that path to do business with them and be able to have some form of service relationship with them, help them win with your service, or how do you eventually get there, or maybe there's another opportunity another way, but you have to be able to I think understand people and their needs and then take that into consideration as you're assessing their real needs as a customer. So
absolutely. And it's something that so many businesses don't think enough about. I mean, we all expect someone to come buy from us as soon as they find out about us because we know how great we are. Or at least we think we know how great we are. But not everyone else has that same mindset, has that same perspective of our business, even knows as much as we think they should know. So we can't expect everyone to all be at that same place and same time at the same time. And I think that's very important, what you're talking about with that brand awareness and building that customer base, because you're going to have some people that are ready to go as soon as the brand comes out the door, and other people that it's going to take them 5 years to actually get comfortable with that same mentality. And I know you've done a lot in the past with other companies you've worked with that have basically, been startups, and you've kind of taken the initial concept and just really made it blow up and made it become a brand in itself. So I definitely want to incorporate some of your experiences with those as well. But before we get into just the specifics of that, whenever we're talking about that path or that buying cycle, what do people experience? What kind of is their thought process or their actions between that brand new, not knowing anything about you, all the way up to buying from you? Walk us through just an example of what a customer experiences along that path and that journey.
You bet. Well, I think it's going to begin with the feeling out process. And today we have, we have so many more avenues to connect to customers, or customers connect to you. Yeah. 10 years ago, I would never have gotten messaged on social media and done business, selling cattle, buying cattle. This is back when I was selling bulls, or even today when we make new customers and work with them based on messaging off of Facebook alone for the first 4 or 5 interactions. So it's definitely changed from that standpoint. So you have to assessment to me is the biggest key here. you have to be able to assess that person.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to have, I would say, a common sense approach or a set of street smart type skills to be able to assess and understand this person. Where are they at along that cycle or path? And are they just sniffing? Are they kind of a scratch and sniffer? Hey, I want to check this out, I'm curious. Or are they coming in with some prior knowledge? So asking questions or listening to them, you can help gather some information so that you can you can anchor yourself and really know who you're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
If they've come in with a little bit of prior knowledge, but they don't know a lot, then you have to, I believe, somewhat start from the beginning, but start laying that foundation for what it is you're doing, and then why it's positive. But it's that whole, you're smelling each other out. They
Mm-hmm.
want to find out how genuine you are, and they want to find out how legit your product is. And sometimes people want to be sold in a non-traditional way. They don't want to be stepping on a car lot and be run down by 5 different guys that want to sell you
Right.
a car. A lot of times it is a process of you learning more about them. Hey, this is what I can do. How can I help you? Or tell me about your operation. How do you think I can help fit what I do and fill some gaps for you? How can I be a resource for you? It's not you actually necessarily asking that question, but you ask a series of questions perhaps that help you derive some of those conclusions based on their responses.
Yeah.
Asking, for us, it's the cattle industry. Whether I'm talking to a rancher, I'm talking to a feed yard, or somebody within the space, that somehow I'm connected to them in some way. Whether that's from a ranch experience, et cetera. And so I'm going to do my best to try to connect with them, understand who they are, and begin that process. Then I can assess, okay, now I know who they are. Now I've got a better idea of where they kind of want to go. And if they're just coming into a relationship with us because of it's curious to them, then that helps me begin to, I guess, build that foundation in an accurate way so that I walk them along that path to doing business, showing them, here is the next step, and really understanding how we can be impactful and be resourceful. So I think it's extremely important that first meeting, whether you're just asking questions on social media or you're having a face-to-face, it's all about asking the right questions and gathering the right insights so that you can then pose the right questions back and begin to move them from just a pure curious natured possible customer into somebody who's, okay, I'm comfortable with this guy. He knows what he's talking about. He shares some of the same insights as I do. He's experienced some of the same things I have. And so I'm a little more comfortable that if I have an issue, he's experienced it potentially himself and can help navigate or help be a resource to me getting from point A to point B.
Right.
And I think that's a you have to genuinely invest in understanding that potential customer to be able to then move them along that path. I think it's a lot of it's recon on the fly is what it is.
Yeah.
And it's changed so much because it used to be person to person, maybe on a telephone. Now it's person to person on a telephone. It could be over a Twitter exchange. It could be a social media message. I'm still surprised about how much business we generate and create through social media platforms and people that just ask questions. Or I've got a very large feed yard cooperative that we do some business with, and is growing a great relationship. And it all started off of social media. It started off with social media and connectivity in like or similar relationships that we had, and they watched and watched and watched, and then reached out, and then now it's a relationship that we're starting to grow. And so there are examples of how people continually watch you, whether or not you know they are.
Yes.
And something I use a lot, especially with social media in your marketing campaigns in print, for every person that has seen something you've produced, there are literally dozens upon dozens that have seen it that you don't know saw it. It's kind of like rats in a barn. And for every
Right.
rat that you see, there's maybe 100 rats that are there that you'll never see because that's just the way it works. They come out at night and they're hidden between the walls and spaces that you don't have access to. So for every what do we call it, interaction or like you get, there are, for every one of those, there's hundreds that you may not see that are seeing it. And we know that's true. I know it's true personally, just based on my travel. I travel a lot for work, and so I do a lot of in person, whether it's trade shows or just stops on a ranch or a feed yard, and somebody say, "Hey, I saw that deal you did last week. I really like that." And you had no clue who they were before you showed up, and you had no clue they were even following you, but they still see you. And so it's you gotta remember, constantly be laying the breadcrumbs and gathering insights about potential customers, because it's very important. It's the single, to me, most important thing, going back to what you initially asked, that gets you from that person off of the starting blocks and start moving them along the path to doing business with you.
Well, I think it goes to show you never know where the person that's engaging with you is. Like you said, for every one person that's seen it, dozens more have you don't know that they've seen it. And who's to say that they are seeing you for the first time or been following you or ready to buy from you and just have never talked to you about it? So being able to connect all throughout those different points, I think, is so important and so relevant, especially to keep your business growing and to keep that brand building. One thing that I kind of want to dig into a little bit, and let's jump inside our customer's head real quick, and talk about the specific elements that they are thinking about or wanting to find out. Where is their thought process when they're seeing you for the very first time, to when they have kind of seen you a little bit but just don't know enough, to they're thinking about doing business with you, now they're doing business with you. What points do we need to target and to attract? If we can get inside their head, what are they thinking, what are they looking for, and how can we capture the right message to give them based upon that point of the journey?
Well, I tell you, that's a great question. And again, it's not an easy one to answer because all customers are different. Some customers are very kind of like the average male. When you go shopping, it's I'm in, I'm out. I know exactly what I want, and I want to get done and get back to something else. And then you have your browsers, and you have shoppers that like to maybe they don't know exactly what they want, and so they wanna shop a little bit and sort and sniff around. I think you're gonna have to assess what that type of customer is that you're dealing with. Are they somebody who is very data driven, that knows exactly what they want, and it's very, very black and white, and okay, I know how this person wants to do business with me. I know how they prefer to do business. So I'm going to acclimate to that environment, and I'm going to be extremely prepared. I'm going to have all the data he needs. I'm going to speak very, what do I say? My vernacular is going to match his style of buying. I'm going to change the way I approach, how I speak to him, what I'm talking about, and then adapt as the conversation continues to go on, or the experience goes on, or the relationship over the years continues to go on. Maybe you develop that person into a customer. Generally, in my experience, if it's that kind of customer, then offer new insights or new options to them. Hey, I can help buy your bulls for you, or I can make your experience that much easier because now I know what you want. I can provide more convenience. I can do these things right here. And okay, that appeals to me. You'll have other customers that are completely the opposite. So I think it starts there with gathering those insights. Who is that customer? And then adapting how you bring service to those customers based on how they like to buy. Yeah. There are definitely buying patterns and personality patterns with customers, and each one of them is a little different, but they're definitely in subcategories that you can start to identify. And once you break that down and understand what those customers really prefer from the relationship with you, as well as the product you offer, then it makes those exchanges that much easier and more frictionless to get through. I think that's a good way to put it. You want to make your process as as rewarding to them, but as frictionless to them at the same time. Don't put up barriers that aren't necessary. And I think sometimes we do that by maybe having the same approach for all of them. But we got to learn, I think, that that's not true. I mean, some customers don't necessarily know exactly what they want when they come to potentially do business with you. They're just saying, hey, this looked interesting. I kind of want to check it out and learn more about it. And the next thing you know, you're doing business for 10 years because you were able to assess not only their needs, but their personality and how they like to do business, and then adapt, during that process of doing business to it. So I hope I answered your question on that, but I think a lot of it goes back to buying styles match the selling style. And I think your selling style, my best advice is don't think of yourself as a salesman. Think of yourself as a service provider, because that's what you're doing. And the company I manage currently does not have a home office, so to speak. We don't have brick and mortar. We're on the go most of the time. So wherever our laptops and our iPhones and stuff are is where our office is for that day. But if we did have brick and mortar, I told all of our team members that we would have, we help people over the door. As soon as somebody walked in, that's what they'd see. And everything starts from there. If you go back and remember, you're in business, obviously, to be profitable and make money, but that has to be most of the time in a service-based or servient style. And so we help people. How can I help you? Bring resourcefulness to them, sell them a product that helps them win. And I think that's a lot of it. If you can help people consistently win, then they'll keep coming back. So.
And it's something that we don't think about a lot whenever you talk about, adjusting your selling style, because we can sit here and talk all day about how our buyers approach it differently based upon their personality, where they are in the cycle, et cetera, et cetera. But we don't flip that around and say, okay, so how do we sell to those people differently based on where they are in the buying cycle and their character? We have almost a set process of, we want to talk about this, we want to show them this, we want to take them here. Well, that doesn't work the same way for everybody. So I really appreciate that point of, adjusting even not only what you're communicating throughout that process, but how you're communicating it to different audiences. And that even backs up to, our first step that we talked about in the podcast last week of, identifying who that person is, what they like, where their interest is, what their persona is. And then you incorporate, okay, now that we know about them, where are they? So how do we speak to them in a manner that resonates with them in the buying cycle and goes along with their character? And you've got to marry the two to actually be successful in that. So I appreciate that insight, that it's not just where they are, but it's how they respond to that specific point also.
Yeah, and I think something to consider, and this is probably going to be the case more often than not, depending on what you're selling. Especially if you are in agriculture, you better get used to having more than one person at the same time that you're having to analyze and sell to. Yeah. Whether it's a father and a son, and the father has his set way of how he likes to do business, his own persona, and the son has his. Maybe the father is very traditional in his approach to, he's going to analyze the animals. Let's say you're selling bulls. You're going to analyze the animals for what they are, the physical characteristics. The son may be a little more versed in data and information and precision ag from that standpoint. Not that what the father is doing doesn't have precision to it, but it's just a different type. Mm-hmm. So then you're going to have to analyze both of those and then talk to them completely different at the same time. But the one that's really coming, I tell you, is the husband-wife. Both of them, a lot of times anymore, you're talking to both a husband-wife team. Mm-hmm. And I tell you, the trend that I've seen that's both exciting, because I'm a father of 3 little girls, but is taking some adjustment on the part of those that are in sales and service, is the female in the ranch and feed yard spaces, or just spaces in agriculture. They're coming, guys, and they're coming like gangbusters. And they're occupying lots of positions of leadership, and it's only going to continue to grow. And so you better be able to speak their language. You better be able to speak a husband and wife language. And for a lot of years, I'd sell bulls, and one of the family members would want to see one piece of information, and they would make their decision based on X, the other one on Y. So you'd have to analyze both personalities. How do I sell to each one of them? How do I fill in gaps for each one of them so that I'm properly addressing their needs as a customer, but at the same time making sure that they arrive at a point that they're both comfortable with too, and you don't create a conflict between both sides. And so you're almost a salesman / conflict resolution specialist at the same time, because they don't always agree. And so you have to then help rationalize, okay, this is what we are doing. And it's really, people skills are extremely important. Understanding, who needs to hear what in a multiple person setting like that. And I think that's going to be more common over time. I think you're going to see a lot more gender diversification, especially moving forward from here. It's already happening. The last 10 years has seen a lot. And people in leadership positions won't just be male. I think it'll be very diverse over the next couple of decades, and even growing. So
that's a great point. I mean, there's no question that the females are coming. They're coming in strong. They're doing an outstanding job, and we need to be able to modify our approach and perspective, and learn how to communicate. Because it's becoming more popular too that sometimes they are more competent and more able to make the decision than the male counterparts in some situations, and we don't always realize that. But keeping that in the back of our mind, that we're not always talking to the guy. We're talking to the decision maker, and whoever that is, how do we cater to their thought process? I appreciate you bringing that up. Okay, folks, we're going to stop for just a quick second here, and I want to talk to you about the video strategy workshop that we offer. You do not want to create a video without a good strategy in place, but there are so many different details to think about that it can be overwhelming, it can be challenging, it can be frustrating. And you're like, why is this not working? Why are we not getting views? Why are we not growing sales? Because we're not implementing the right strategy to attract the right audience, give them the path to follow, and then measuring the results of that campaign. Well, the video strategy workshop takes care of that problem for you. It solves that issue of not knowing what's not working, and more importantly, how to start on the right foot to begin with. We have a 2-hour workshop. We go through all the details of your business. We talk about your products, your services, what you're currently doing, and how you need to actually interact with your audience using video. So if you're interested in finding out more about this workshop and how it can work for your business, visit backroad-productions.com/workshops. Let's jump back into our conversation with Jared. So now you've done a lot in the past several years. You've worked with a multitude of companies. So I want to get into the application, boots on the ground tactics that you have personally used through your experience and through your time in the industry to market throughout the journey and attract different types of clientele and carry them through that buyer journey. Let's get practical here, and just start off with maybe telling me some of the things you started doing early on, and what you're doing now, and just kind of give me the perspective of your marketing experience and what you've done over the past several years.
You bet. I tell you that the most important thing I can tell you is marketing is something that takes maximum effort. And I've mentioned this before at speaking events that I've talked to groups of people about this very subject. And I've told them, you have to approach marketing like a dog that likes to kill chickens. I mean, you have to go at it nonstop, 24/7, 365. And that 23rd chicken you kill is just as satisfying as the first one. You have to have that kind of mentality. It just takes tremendous amounts of effort. You have to that first sale and that 23rd sale are just as satisfying. And that first person you help is just as satisfying as the 23rd person, as the 50th person, as the 100th person. That ad you put together, all of that, you just have to approach it like a dog that likes to kill chickens. And that's, you need to be thinking about it when you're not killing chickens, you're thinking about how to kill chickens. And that's just
right.
kind of mentality I think you have to have, and continuing to think of new ways to get out there and get in front of people and build that brand. I think the stories have always been important, but we didn't really call them stories years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Brands that were always around had the history, the mystique, the aura, which is their story. They've just been around forever. Everybody knew their story. It wasn't called that. Today, there's a lot of successful businesses that have figured out that there is tremendous amounts of power in that story. And as expensive as certain parts of media are, I mean, they're very valuable, but they're costly.
Right.
So if you can learn how to do some things yourself, and be very diligent, but also when I say do an appropriate level of or quality of work. So if you can somewhat do things in-house, the good thing about technology is we have those abilities. Most of the members of our team have an iPhone that is equipped with a handful of apps where we can edit and cut our own video and do some things where we can, if we're on the fly and we're on somebody's ranch and we want to throw something on our story, we can, in seconds, we can kind of take that information once we leave, process it, and throw it up.
Right.
We've made good use of some of those tools. I would encourage anybody to take a look at some of the things you can buy for iPhones or Androids or mobile devices that would help you do a better job capturing marketing materials. The other philosophy I'd share with you is something I'm totally stealing from somebody else that I heard years ago from Eric Grant, the Grant Company. So he's a very successful marketing guy.
Mm-hmm.
You Angus breeders should know who that is. Got a great friend that works for him. And he told, I bet I was 23, 4, 5 at a kind of a young guns conference. And he said, you got to keep a lot of hay in the barn. And by he was meaning that every time you get a chance to take pictures and you see something that's valuable, grab it, take pictures, take video. You may not use it right away, but stick it in the barn. Keep that hay in the barn, because whenever things are slower and you don't have as much stuff, or let's say you have an advertising idea that comes to you 5 months later, and you're like, man, there's a picture. I already have it. I took 5 of them. I'm going to sort through them and see which one works the best. So anytime you get an opportunity to do that, keep a lot of hay in the barn. So I've thanked Eric for that one multiple times, because I put that to good use over the years. And social media is, I think, still way underappreciated for the power that it can bring. And I think it's all about understanding who uses what platform, because it's all different. I can tell you that the patterns in our industry of who likes Twitter versus who likes Facebook versus who likes Instagram versus who likes Snapchat and LinkedIn and all these things, it's all different.
Mm-hmm.
And it's definitely worth your time trying to figure out who's who and where they like to be, so that you can try to deliver material. And what we like to do is to build our brand as well as the story of the brand and keep that full. And I would encourage listeners to really dive into that, because keeping a story that's fun and interesting is extremely important to keeping people tuned in and watching. Right. It's no different than television. If they're tuned in and watching, then your advertising can be subtly laid in to that story, and you gear those advertising pieces towards different customers, somebody from above, somebody from below, somebody at different parts of that buying cycle that may be watching, and you build those and you slip them in, and everybody's taking it in little by little as they continue to watch that story, and they keep coming. It becomes a very valuable tool to you to be able to build your vision, mission, statement through that story, and people really understand, all right, I see what these guys are doing. I like what they're doing, and they live this day by day just like we do. So I think that's extremely important. I'd love to be able to do more stuff in print media. It's so expensive, and with a startup company, traditionally, I've been strapped budgetarily wise, and so the ability to do lots of that has been challenged, and has forced me to think outside the box and use other tactics to try to spread the message. And so I would say social media has been extremely valuable. It is to me, I think still way underappreciated for how powerful it is. But I think turning others into your ambassadors is the other way. I think you have to figure out a way to get others to help push your brand in a way that it creates that halo effect. If you're familiar with marketing terms, where I'm associated with this other established brand, and they are telling their customers and their followers, whether it's in a print advertisement or someplace else, that, hey, this is a legitimate brand, and it helps build your legitimacy of what you're doing by seeking opportunities and partnerships to co-brand some things. And I think that's important, especially social media world, when you start cross-posting and sharing, and you can get others to help you build a following and build a brand by the tagging and sharing methods. I think that's some stuff to sure take a look at, because I tell you what, you'd be shocked at how many 60-year-old guys sit in their PJs and take an iPad and they look at Facebook for hours on their wife's Facebook page, and they don't have one, but their wife do. But they are social media creepers, guarantee you. And I've spoken lots of meetings about that topic, and every one of their wives, while I'm saying that, is right behind them, pointing at them, laughing, saying, "Yep, that's him to a T." So whether or not you think each generation utilizes the social media side of it, they do. They may not have a Facebook page, but if their wife does, they're looking.
Yeah.
And you can deliver information to them. You just have to know how, and a good subtle way to get it to them, keep them coming back, and tell that story, and build that brand. So I think that's important. And do it. And you have to do the same way. Like a dog that likes to kill chickens, you have to just be tenacious, absolutely tenacious about it. So I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, definitely. That goes to show too that there is so many different elements and components and spots and tactics. And I mean, this is by no means a one discussion conversation, and it's something that always changes based upon what your campaign is, what your company is, who you're trying to target. And it always changes. I mean, even, in the last 10 years, it's changed. Last 5 years, it's changed. So there is never a one size fits all universal approach of this is how you talk to this person at this point for this reason. But if you combine all the elements together and acknowledge the fact that this person is looking for this particular piece of information or this element, or this is what they're thinking about. Now, how do I approach that mindset with that character and what my brand represents, and connect with them multiple points and build that all through the cycle? And it changes so much. It's so fluid. But that consistency, like you were talking about, is so prevalent, because you do have to keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. And then when you think you've done enough, you do it again and again and again. And eventually that person decides, hey, they're worth buying from, which I think is something that we don't bring into the conversation enough. How does that conversation change from point A to point B to point C? So as you're talking with customers, what are just some of the main ideas or the main concepts that you want to get across to a brand new person, or to someone who is thinking about doing business with you, or someone who just needs more information to make the purchase? What are specific elements that you want to be sure that they know about to help them make that decision?
Well, I think that changes throughout the cycle or the path of moving from a prospect to an actual customer. I think it starts as the initial inquiry. What are you and what can you do? What do you do? What can I learn about you? And I think conversation changes once they wrap their head around that. It becomes, okay, what can you do for me specifically? I think the focus begins to narrow. So it becomes more granular in your relationship and how you deliver that type of communication to them based on their specific relationship that'll exist with you if they become a customer. So it starts at a high level and then comes down to a pretty small, fine-tuned conversation. I think it then begins to get to that point when they're almost a customer, as some of the other things that would come into their mind of it's more, I think, details and gathering information about the specific transaction. How does it work?
Mm-hmm.
How can I be rewarded for this? How are you rewarded for this? What's going to cost? What is the next transaction like if we do this one? So I think you definitely start from the who are you and what do you deliver, and quickly, hopefully, if you can resolve that and add some transparency and clarity to that, you then move into, okay, how does that specifically apply to me? Okay, how does that specifically apply to me in this particular circumstance? And then, okay, how does this specifically apply to me in this circumstance if I go with option A, B, or C? And then I think it continues moving forward after that. I think it starts from the 30,000 foot view and then gets all the way down to ground zero at the end. And I think that's the way I approach it.
Yeah, that's very well laid out, and something I haven't even thought about. As you talk about, you start off with, your goal is always to find out how you can serve the customer, but a lot of times the first thing we talk about is what we do and why they should come work for us. We don't try to say what do you need and how can we help you. It's here's what we do. If you want it, come and get it. But flipping that around and approaching it with, how can we serve you? What is your pain point? Starts the conversation on a whole different trajectory. So that's definitely a good point to keep in mind, and keep that focus on them, not just on you. And I know that before you were talking about, you've made a lot of mistakes, you said, or you've learned a lot over the last several years. What are some of the things that have worked really well, and some of the things you're like, why did I even try that? Kind of give us some practical experience on the good and bad of what you've seen in your time.
Oh, that's a great question. Boy, I mean, I should have made a list of them because there's plenty. I think designing marketing pieces or advertising pieces is important. I mean, I've made a lot of mistakes. I think you can overcomplicate scenarios and advertisements and ads.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes keeping them simple, keeping the grab and pull very, very impactful, but simple and clever to get them in. I mean, the idea is you want to draw enough attention to at least get somebody to take a second look, and then maybe I'll read it. And if I'm going to read 2 lines, is it good enough to get me to read the whole paragraph? And then now I'm a little bit more intrigued about what to do. And so I think I learned that is very important in advertising, because everybody's bombarded with it 24/7 and everything they look at, to say as much as you possibly can with as little as you can. And that little verbiage, and I'm saying not necessarily, I'm trying to say that definitely keep your verbiage to a minimum, but if you can have a picture, if you can have a video, if you can talk through those images and those media resources, and somebody can watch that, and you can explain a little bit about you and what you do and what you offer through that, then I think it makes that much more of an impact, because it has multiple layers to it, and then the verbiage goes with it, and the whole thing kind of pulls them in. And the verbiage plus the media, and they can say, I kind of know what these guys are doing, and they can draw conclusions more easily. So I think that's a clear one, that it took a little bit to sink in. And I don't say sink in as far as I got it fairly early, but to be able to have a knack for the right media, you're like, okay, I know what I need to do, but then you got to kind of stab around in the dark sometimes and find out which pieces were good. And even now, I mean, there's some things you think may have a big impact and you're shocked because maybe it wasn't as received as you thought. And so it's a constant process of trying to mine media resources that can help tell your story and explain what you do along with the verbiage, so that way you can keep the verbiage to a minimum and people can look at an ad and say, okay, right off the bat, I kind of get an idea of what these guys are doing. Mm-hmm. So it kind of makes sense. At least sets the table, the verbiage to then bring on the main course. So yeah, I think that's important. Wow. Yeah. Oh man, I know there are tons of mistakes I've made. I'm really trying to find one specific one that would be a definite don't. They are there. I mean, web pages, do not make them too big. I think that's an early one. At first, I wanted to have everything I could have on there. I think it's okay for somebody to call you and want to connect, and you want to talk to them. So having a web page that was educational, was smart or short and smartly written and to the point, but it does not have to be extravagant and just enormous and cumbersome to get through. Right. I think that's one thing I learned off is that was a mistake I made. I was like, well, this is going to be the most awesome web page anything we're seeing is like, whoa, blow their mind. And before you knew it, I mean, most of the pages weren't even looked at. And so if you look at the metrics that are available to you on studying web pages and your social media stuff, you'll learn that, wow, some of these pages are really not necessary and nobody really looks at them anyways. So study that. I think that's a good one I just stumbled onto that I was not very good at it. First, definitely study your metrics that are given to you. They are your breadcrumbs to follow to help do a better job using the tools that are there for you to connect to people. So how often is your website visited? What pages are visited the most? When you put something new up, how fast is it kind of the uptake and integration of people looking at that, and how many people visit it and come back to it and how often? So I think there are some things like that are extremely important. As far as person to person, man, be yourself unless you're somebody that's hard to be around. I hate to put it that way.
Then be a faker.
Yeah, I mean, if people don't like being around you, be really good at being a fake you. Because I think, I'm just being silly, but I think it's important to be genuine and to make people want to just talk. And I think that's the one thing we overlook. Some guys are like, I don't like tire kickers. And I'm like, well, if I can turn a tire kicker into a lifelong customer because I spend an extra 30 minutes just talking about his cows, or looking through the pens in his feed yard, et cetera, then that's okay. I mean, I like talking about cows too. So I think you have to take the mindset that you can never be afraid to invest in one of your customers. And whether that's time or he has some form of a problem and you've got to invest fuel and some money to help him out. I think investments in customers are extremely important. Most of the time, not all the time, the overwhelming majority of the time, if you have a customer that you are willing to invest in some way or multiple ways, they'll always do business with you. Yeah. And I've got guys like that all over the country. In North America. I mean, it's just, they always do business with you because they understand that you're going to take care of them, and you do the little things and invest and then have that type of relationship. Doesn't mean you're buddies with them and you're going to send each other Christmas cards. It just means that you genuinely care about what they're doing, interested in their success. And I think that's important. So I think keeping that we help people at the center of what you do is extremely important. Don't lose sight of that.
Yeah, as long as your customer knows that you're going to be there and you're going to take care of them and you're going to make sure that they win, they succeed. How you do it doesn't really make as much difference as the fact that you do it and then they feel that you take care of them.
Yeah, no, I think that's important. I agree. So, and
So
I wish I
we've
had
talked.
some other specific ways, but I don't have
What's
it off the
that?
top of my head. So I said, I wish I had a whole, and I guarantee I could put together a list of them for you. I wish I had some additional ways that I've like learned from my mistakes. And if I do at some point, I'll share that with you, and you could be more than happy to do a solo episode all about my mistakes. So
Mistakes
yeah,
101, what not to do in marketing.
wisdom is not free. It's not
Yes.
free. Wisdom, you pay emotional equity to gain wisdom. That's what it costs you. And it is. I mean, sometimes it costs you financially as well, but
Right.
that's the price. But it makes you better. It makes you better.
Definitely.
So.
If I was reading here a while back, and the concept was, if you consider everything that you've done that hasn't gone the way you want it to as a failure, then you're not going to do any better. But if you take that and do it as a learning experience, then you're always going to get better. And you need to fail as much as you can in order to actually figure out what does work and make that be the route that you take. If you keep trying it and you don't learn from why it didn't work, then it's not going to happen.
Yep. Oh, it's very true. Yep. Great.
So as we wrap up, we've talked about a lot of different things here. What is the one thing that you think brands should remember when they are trying to take a customer through this buying path and identify their needs? What should they remember, if nothing else, from this conversation?
It's all about people and human equity. You cannot overlook that. I mean, at the end of the day, that's a person you're dealing with, and you have to genuinely understand who they are, what their needs are, and how they like to buy. And if you can establish those couple of things and have that same mentality, we're here to help people. Most of these guys and gals that are out there running businesses, or that are going to be in charge of new businesses and startups and marketing companies, etc., directors of marketing, I think they'll be fine. You just have to master those things. I think it all lies right there. And then be tenacious.
Yeah.
Be tenacious. Never settle for, man, maybe I'll just come back to that in a week, or I'll let somebody else. I think that's the important pieces. So it's kind of what do you want to call it? The trifecta. So
Right.
Be tenacious in your marketing approach. Be that dog that likes to kill chickens, and master people, the human equity side of it, and we help people. Keep those things at the core of what you do, and I think you'll be successful.
I think that's awesome advice, right? And that can carry you through business no matter what you do, if you keep those 3-4 things in mind, for sure.
Yep. Doesn't matter what you're selling. Well, I mean, it does matter what you're selling to an extent. Some things are not a service, and some things are more of a necessity, and so it changes the relationship. But in general, I assume most of the people that are going to listen to this podcast are service-based businesses, much like what we are, tend to be in agriculture. So I think that's got to be your approach. So.
Definitely. Well, Jared, thanks for the wealth of insight and information, experience. There's always new insight when you talk marketing, and it changes so frequently. It's always great to hear what does work, what doesn't work, what has changed. And I really appreciate the insight that you had on just understanding really who your customer truly is, and not only adjusting your communication based upon where they are, but adjusting it based upon who they are. I think that's a very important element to consider. So thanks so much for joining the show today, Jared. Appreciate you being here.
Hey, absolutely. Glad to be here, and have me anytime.
Well, here we are, folks, the end of episode number 9, and Jared left some really, really good insight. I love these conversations because I never quite know where the story is going to go, but it always goes somewhere fascinating, somewhere intriguing, and somewhere very educational. And if nothing else today, we learned that every person is different, and you cannot approach marketing with a blanket universal message, approach, method. It has to be catered to the person you're talking to. Whether that's one-on-one, whether that's a video, whether that's marketing in general, you've got to be able to relate to your customer where they are, understand how they respond to your message. So thanks for the insight, Jared. Thanks for a great conversation today. Folks, if you want to check out more of the show notes and find out more about Top Dollar Angus, visit backroad-productions.com/podcast and check out the show notes for this episode. Thanks for joining us today. We look forward to having you next week on In Focus.